The silence cracked like glass when Ava slid the final piece across the desk, a voice recording of Tessa's client calls, undermining her mental state. But before anyone could speak, Tessa reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "Uncle Ray left this for you," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. Ava's pulse thundered in her ears as she unfolded the letter. The first line stole the breath from her lungs. "Ava, if you're reading this, then the truth about Matthew can no longer be buried." Her hands trembled. Matthew Carter, her fiancé, her future, had died in a tragic car accident 3 years ago. Or so she'd believed. The letter revealed what no one had dared tell her. Matthew had uncovered discrepancies in her father's business accounts. He was planning to go to the authorities. Her father had begged him to reconsider. They met in the rain near the old viaduct. There was an argument, and then, a fall. Not a crash, a cover-up. Ava's knees went weak. "You let me mourn him," she whispered, her voice cracking, "while you buried the truth." Her mother's tears came too late. Her father sat hollow, broken, and Tessa, she had known. She hadn't just stolen Ava's home. She had let her grieve a lie. Rage and heartbreak warred inside Ava. But one thing was clear now, this wasn't just personal. It was criminal, and it was time the world knew. The next morning, the sirens arrived before sunrise, their flashing lights casting red and blue shadows across the stoop of Uncle Ray's brownstone. Ava stood on the porch, arms folded, watching the slow unraveling of a legacy built on lies. Her parents were led out first, her mother sobbing, her father silent, eyes fixed on the pavement like a man already serving a sentence in his mind. Then came Tessa, thrashing against the office's grip, her once pristine image shattered. "This is your fault," she screamed at Ava, her voice raw. "You think you're better than us? You think you won?" Ava didn't flinch. She stepped forward, letting the truth cut deeper than any accusation. "No, Tessa," she said quietly. "You destroyed yourselves. I just turned on the lights." For all her fury, Tessa had nothing left to say. Ava watched as the police car doors shut behind them, the chapter closing with a final, irrevocable clang. The truth was no longer hidden. And for the first time in years, Ava wasn't the one being silenced, she was the one writing the ending. 6 weeks later, Ava stood in the grand entryway of Uncle Ray's brownstone, the late afternoon sun casting warm, golden light across the restored hardwood floors. The house felt different now, no longer a vault of secrets, but a place reborn, where once her family had plotted in silence. Now voices of hope and healing echoed through its halls. The front parlor had been transformed into a gallery space, the upper rooms into creative studios for at-risk youth and survivors of trauma. Ava named it the Matthew Carter Center for Creative Recovery, using funds reclaimed from her family's seized accounts to give others the chance to rebuild. She watched as volunteers set up for the center's opening, art supplies and canvases replacing the ghosts that once haunted the rooms. Beside her, Noah placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You really did it," he said softly. Ava smiled, not with triumph, but with peace. "If I sold it, it would have been another win for them. But this is something they can't take." Uncle Ray had left her more than a house. He'd left her a foundation. And Ava? She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building something real. Something lasting. Something born not from blood, but from ashes. That night, long after the last guest had left and the soft hum of voices had faded into silence, Ava stood alone in the study, her study now. The air smelled of fresh paint and possibility. The walls no longer heavy with betrayal but humming with new purpose. A blank canvas waited on the easel before her, a palette of colors laid out beside it like an invitation. For years, her life had been shaped by the choices of others, by their secrets, their lies, their control, but not anymore. Now, every brushstroke was hers to make. She dipped the bristles into a deep, bold blue and let the first stroke slice across the canvas. A declaration. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice anymore. It was about becoming. Uncle Ray's words echoed in her mind. Some families are built from blood, others from ashes. Ava stepped back, studying that single, defiant line of color. This time, she whispered to the quiet room, "I hold the brush." And with that, she began. The story of Ava Langston teaches us that true strength isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's about reclaiming your voice in the aftermath. Ava's journey shows that family isn't defined by blood, but by integrity, trust, and the choices we make when everything falls apart. Faced with deception and loss, she chose truth over revenge, healing over hate. Her resilience turned destruction into purpose, proving that even from the ashes of deep betrayal, something beautiful and lasting can rise. In the end, the lesson is clear. We are not what happens to us, we are what we create from it. Hi, welcome my channel. This is the story of Ava, betrayed, stripped of everything, but she rose and took back justice. Stay tuned until the end. The sound of shattering glass jolted Ava Langston from her thoughts. One moment, she was standing in the kitchen of her Brooklyn loft, the home she had built from the ground up, and the next, her younger sister Tessa was standing in the doorway with a look of icy determination. You need to leave, Ava, she said flatly. Ava blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Her parents sat on the couch, uncomfortably silent, refusing to meet her gaze. Her mother's hands were clenched in her lap, while her father seemed suddenly fascinated by the pattern in the rug. Excuse me? Ava asked, her voice dangerously calm. You can't just barge in and tell me to leave my own home. Tessa crossed her arms. We've discussed this. As a family. Ava let out a humorless laugh. Funny, I don't recall being a part of that discussion. The tension in the room thickened. Tessa's tone sharpened as she accused Ava of living an easy life, working from home, free from the struggles the rest of them faced. But Ava could barely process the words. 5 years. 5 years of offering them shelter after they lost their home, letting them stay rent-free, paying the bills without complaint. And now this? Her parents stayed silent as Tessa justified her actions with rehearsed self-righteousness. The betrayal was staggering. Ava's calm cracked. Where exactly am I supposed to go? Tessa? She asked through clenched teeth. Tessa's shrug was dismissive. That's not our problem. Ava reached for her phone. Then I'm calling the police. But her father finally spoke, his voice unnervingly calm. You can't legally evict us, Ava, not without formal proceedings. The words struck her like ice water. They had planned this, and in that moment, Ava realized, this wasn't just family drama. This was war. Ava walked out of her own home with nothing but a duffel bag, her laptop, and the weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest. Noah's apartment in Queens felt sterile and unfamiliar, no matter how warmly he welcomed her in. As she sat on the edge of the guest bed, the reality of what had happened began to take root, not as a sudden rupture, but as a slow, calculated dismantling of her life. Her parents' silence, Tessa's smug confidence, the conveniently timed legal advice. It hadn't been spontaneous. They hadn't just reached a breaking point. They had been planning this. She could see it now in every look her mother avoided, every word her father chose not to say. Ava remembered the times she'd stayed late working to cover bills they couldn't pay, the nights she'd skipped dinner so they could eat. And all the while, they had been positioning themselves, maneuvering her out of her own life. The shock turned to fury, quiet but seething, as Ava stared at the ceiling. They thought she'd roll over. They thought kindness made her weak. But they had made one critical mistake. They left her just enough space to fight back. Days blurred together in Noah's apartment as Ava buried herself in files, spreadsheets, and the one place her family hadn't yet infiltrated, her laptop. She scrolled through her bank transactions, each line item stabbing deeper than the last. The pattern was clear: small withdrawals, just under the $5 threshold, scattered across months. At first glance, they seemed harmless, even routine, but Ava knew better. Her fingers trembled as she totaled the amounts. $47. Gone. Stolen. Drained while she was busy paying their groceries, their prescriptions, their lies. Her jaw clenched. Tessa. It had her fingerprints all over it. But it didn't stop there. With a few keystrokes, Ava opened her email logs and saw them, messages sent to her biggest clients, subtly questioning her reliability, her stability, fabricated stories about stress breakdowns, missed deadlines, mental health. Tessa was doing more than stealing her money. She was trying to replace her. She's not just taking my business, Ava whispered, bile rising in her throat. She's erasing me. Noah looked over from the doorway, concern etched in his face. But Ava barely noticed. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was character assassination. And she had the proof. Ava stared at the glowing screen of her laptop, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. The chaos had finally sharpened into clarity. Her family thought they'd won. But they didn't know she was watching. Not yet. That was her advantage. With deliberate focus, she opened a new bank account under a different name, moved the remaining funds, and installed layers of encryption across all her devices. She reset passwords, revoked access, and traced every digital footprint Tessa had left behind in her business files. Quietly, methodically, Ava closed the doors they had once walked through with impunity. Noah watched her work in silence, his brow furrowed with unease. "You sure about this?" he asked. Ava didn't look up. "They don't know I know. And that's how I'm going to beat them." Her voice was calm, but her resolve was steel. She wasn't going to confront them yet, not until she had every piece of evidence. Every loose thread tied into a noose they'd woven for themselves. Let them gloat. Let them believe she was broken. Ava was done reacting. It was her turn to play the long game. The envelope arrived on an overcast Thursday. Buried beneath a stack of takeout menus and overdue mail Noah had tossed on the counter. Ava nearly missed it, until she saw the return address, Ray Carter and Associates. Her breath caught. Uncle Ray had passed months ago. His death quiet, overshadowed by the noise of everything else. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and unfolded the legal documents inside. The words blurred for a moment. But one sentence cut through the haze like a blade. Raymond Carter bequeaths his Harlem brownstone to Ava Langston, and Ava Langston alone. Her knees buckled. It was the house her family always wanted. The one her parents called too good to waste on someone like her. A second, handwritten letter slipped out, Uncle Ray's familiar, careful script addressed directly to her. "If you're reading this, Ava, then the truth has started to surface. I tried to warn you about them, especially Tessa. But I know how hard it is to see clearly when you're surrounded by love that's laced with poison. This house is your anchor. Use it wisely. Let it be your shield." Ava stared at the letter, her chest tightening. Uncle Ray had known. He'd seen the storm coming. And now, in death, he'd handed her a lifeline and a weapon. The moment Ava stepped back into her loft, she knew she had crossed into enemy territory. The space felt familiar, yet foreign. Her furniture still stood, but the soul of the place had been gutted. Her photos were gone, replaced by curated shots of Tessa smiling in places Ava had never been invited to. In the office, Tessa sat at Ava's desk, fingers poised on Ava's old laptop like a queen on a stolen throne. "Looking for this?" she asked. Voice smug. Ava didn't flinch. "You're seriously this desperate?" Tessa feigned concern. "Ava, you need help. You've been erratic. Mom and Dad are really worried." As if summoned, her parents appeared in the doorway, her mother wringing her hands, her father standing stiff and silent like a bodyguard for the truth. "We just want what's best for you," her mother said softly. Then came the papers, a petition for emergency conservatorship. 3 psychologists, paid off or manipulated, had already signed off. In 48 hours, if Ava didn't comply, Tessa would legally control everything. Her business, her finances, her life. Ava didn't speak at first. Instead, she reached into her bag and dropped a thick folder onto the desk. Bank statements, client emails, access logs, screenshots of every lie, every theft, every illegal access. "You've been busy," she said coolly. Tessa's smile faltered. Her parents exchanged panicked glances. "So here's how this goes," Ava continued, her voice steady. "You drop the conservatorship. You stop pretending this is about my well-being. Or I go public, with all of it." The silence that followed was thick with fear. For the first time, Ava watched Tessa squirm. The game had changed.